All right, here we are with Cook Around and Find Out. So one of the things that my friends seem to think is some special trait that I have is the ability to look in my fridge, grab a couple things, and make something delicious. So tonight we've got some onion and peppers. I've got a pound of hamburger, some tomato sauce, some sliced Italian bread, and some garlic and parsley and salt and some Parmesan cheese. So what we're gonna do is a garlic butter bread, and I'm going to cook the hamburger and peppers and onions, put a little bit of tomato paste in there to make it extra delicious, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I have my hamburger in a deep dish skillet. My hamburger still frozen. It's totally fine. We're just gonna let it cook. And we are gonna grab a handful of our peppers that we chopped earlier. Put some of those in there. We're gonna grab our onions. Put some of those in there, give it a nice flavor. Maybe just a few more peppers, don't tell anybody. All right. Now we are gonna give it a little salt. And we're really just gonna let it sit there until the hamburger starts to thaw out. So in the meantime, we're gonna come over here and make our garlic butter. So I've got a couple tablespoons of unsalted butter. Just gonna sprinkle in some garlic. Gonna sprinkle in some parsley and just a little bit of salt. And we're just gonna put this in the microwave until you can spread it with a knife. So we don't want it to melt. So maybe about 15 to 25 seconds. Okay, so I did 20 seconds in the microwave, and as you can see, I can push down on it, but it's not fully melted, which is exactly what we want, so I am just going to stir this up. Okay, so I have my garlic butter all stirred up, and we're just gonna let it sit here and get the flavors melted together while we're waiting on our meat to cook. And it is in here. And it's starting to get thawed out, and that's okay. We're just going to get everything else ready while this is working. Probably a good time to go ahead and turn your oven on 350 and go ahead and put your bread slices on a parchment paper lined tray. Okay, so I took my garlic butter and I spread it all over my bread. And I'm really just going to let this sit here, and we're going to step back over. And I'm gonna use my handy little chopper, and I'm gonna start chopping up the meat here. And then we'll see what happens. So I've got the hamburger chopped up now, and since I have the garlic and parsley still out, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little in there. And just let this keep cooking because I want to make sure that my hamburger is brown. Even though we're going to stick this in the oven, I want to make sure it's fully cooked all the way through. So I'm just going to keep stirring it around here until we get there. And if your hamburger is really frozen and you're having trouble getting it to cook, just put a little bit of chicken broth or maybe even some water in there and put a lid on your skillet. Just put it on medium for probably about 5 or 6 minutes and then go back and check it. And that's usually enough to help it soften up and start cooking. Just went back and added a little bit more garlic because I want to make sure this is good in season. I'm just going to stir it around and turn my heat down and let it keep cooking. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some tomato paste. Probably just go ahead and do that now. Alright. So we're just going to do a couple squeezes. And that's just going to help it bind together and make it nice and delicious. Okay, now when you're cooking, if your hamburger starts sticking, it's totally fine. Turn your heat down a little bit. Add just a little splash of some kind of liquid. I don't have any chicken broth readily available, so I am just going to use water. And you're just going to stir it around. You can see it all coming off the pan. And it'll just add some extra flavor to it. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. And there you go, problem solved. Supper is not ruined. It is totally fine. We put quite a bit of garlic in there, and then we added that tomato sauce, which Tomatoes are a little bit sugary, so that definitely can happen if you've got your heat turned up. So never be afraid, just turn your heat down, add a little bit of liquid, and back to cooking. And now that I've got everything mixed up and pretty much cooked, I decided I wanted to add a little bit more of that tomato paste. So that is what I did, and I am just going to stir it around, let it get incorporated, and we are almost ready to build our delicious little toasted breads. I do random stuff like this all the time. I don't necessarily have a name for what I do. It's just me using what I've got available in the kitchen or the pantry, just making sure nothing goes to waste and trying to find something delicious. So here is what I usually do. I have had my garlic butter on the bread for a while. I'm gonna stick it in a 350-degree oven for just about 3 or 4 minutes and let the butter get melted, and then we're gonna take it out and put our meat and cheese on top and stick it back in. So as you can see, our butter is starting to melt. Definitely want to make sure that your oven temperature is not above 350 if you've got bread sliced this thin. Sometimes it gets too crunchy and it makes it not so great to bite into. Okay, so I baked the bread at 350 for 3 minutes just to get the butter nice and melty. And now I am going to start taking my meat mixture and putting it on the bread just like that. It's okay if it falls off. Some of it's going to. This bread was a little holy, so it is definitely fine just the way that it happens sometimes. And we're just going to keep filling these up here. And then once we fill them all up, we are going to put some cheese on them. All right, so we've got the meat on here. I did 8 slices of bread. You could definitely do 12 or probably even more. Just put maybe a little bit less meat on there. I have got some Parmesan cheese, and we are just going to sprinkle it over the top of all of them. And then we're going to stick it back in the oven and let it melt and get nice and crispy. Super excited about this. I love fast suppers. Suppers like this don't take very long, and once you get used to being able to figure out the ingredients you have and realize that you can do just about anything you want with them, it can go super fast. I had some house projects I was working on today, so supper tonight was an afterthought, and this has come together really quickly. So there they are. We're going to pop them in the oven for about 8 minutes at 350. Just keep an eye on it because you want to pull them out once the cheese has melted. So while that's baking in the oven, this is the great part about cooking at home. So I could have made a couple more toasts out of this, but I'm going to keep it and either throw it on a salad this week for lunch or maybe even in a tortilla. Heck, you could even put it on a bun. But, you know, sometimes you have little bits of food left and you think it's not worth saving. This right here is going to make me real happy when I am working, don't have anything else to eat, and I can pop it in the microwave and throw it on some lettuce with some tomatoes and cheese, maybe a little bit of rich dressing, and call it a day. Okay, so we're out of the oven. The cheese is melted. I'm going to let them sit on the counter probably for about 5 minutes and just let them cool. And then it's time to eat.